Before the guns of August 1914 roared, Europe was a tapestry of alliances, each thread a promise of support, woven together with hopes of security and fears of vulnerability. On one side stood the Central Powers, an alliance initially formed by Germany and Austria-Hungary. Driven by shared ambitions and anxieties, they found common cause in their desire for dominance in Central Europe. Later joined by the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria, their geographical position gave them the advantage of interior lines, but also the burden of fighting on multiple fronts. Opposing them were the Allied powers, an initially loose association of Great Britain, France and Russia. Bound by a complex web of treaties and fueled by suspicion of German ambitions, they sought to contain the growing power of the Central Powers. Italy, initially aligned with Germany and Austria-Hungary, would later switch sides, swayed by promises of territorial gains. Japan, eager to expand its influence in Asia, also joined the Allied cause. The United States, initially neutral, would later be drawn into the conflict, tipping the balance of power. The system of alliances, intended to prevent war, ironically became a catalyst for its outbreak. Each nation, bound by commitments to their allies, found themselves drawn into a conflict that began with a single act of violence in a distant Balkan city. The roots of the First World War ran deep, nourished by a complex interplay of political, economic and social forces that had been brewing for decades. Nationalism, a potent force in the 19th and early 20th centuries, fostered a sense of intense pride and rivalry among the European powers. Germany, newly unified and eager to assert its place in the sun, challenged Britain's long-held naval dominance and clashed with France over disputed territories. Economic competition further fueled tensions. The race for colonies, driven by the desire for raw materials and markets for manufactured goods, created friction between the European powers. Germany's rapid industrialization challenged Britain's economic dominance, while Austria-Hungary and Russia jostled for influence in the volatile Balkans. Military build-ups and technological advancements added a dangerous edge to the rivalry. The dreadnought arms race between Britain and Germany heightened tensions, while advances in artillery, machine guns and chemical weapons promised a new kind of industrialized warfare, deadlier than any before. The spark that ignited the tinderbox of European tensions came on June 28, 1914, in the Bosnian city of Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife Sophie were assassinated by Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian nationalist. Austria-Hungary, blaming Serbia for the assassination, issued a harsh ultimatum, backed by the unwavering support of Germany. Serbia, fearing for its independence, sought the support of its ally, Russia. The intricate web of alliances began to unravel as declarations of war cascaded across Europe. Germany, declaring war on Russia, and its ally France set in motion the Schlieffen Plan, a risky military strategy that aimed to knock France out of the war with a swift and decisive blow, before turning its attention to Russia. On August 4, 1914, German troops crossed the border into Belgium, a neutral country, in a bid to outflank French defences. This act of aggression outraged Great Britain, which declared war on Germany, honouring its commitment to Belgium's neutrality. The First World War, a conflict that would engulf the globe, had begun. The Schlieffen Plan, designed to achieve a quick victory, soon bogged down in the face of fierce resistance from French and British forces. The Battle of the Marne, fought in September 1914, marked the end of mobile warfare on the Western Front. Both sides dug in, creating a complex network of trenches that stretched for hundreds of miles across northeastern France. The Western Front became synonymous with brutal and attritional warfare. Soldiers on both sides endured unimaginable conditions, living in squalor, mud, and the constant threat of death. Battles such as Verdun in 1916 and the Somme, also in 1916, characterized by massive artillery bombardments and futile infantry charges, resulted in unprecedented casualties. New technologies such as poison gas, tanks and airplanes added to the horrors of war but failed to break the stalemate. Section 5. Shifting Sands, the Eastern Front and beyond. While the Western Front became mired in trench warfare, the Eastern Front was characterized by greater fluidity and vast distances. Russia, with its vast manpower reserves, initially posed a formidable threat to Germany and Austria-Hungary. However, the Russian army suffered from poor leadership, inadequate supplies, and logistical challenges. Germany, led by the skilled military tactician Paul von Hindenburg, inflicted crushing defeats on the Russians at the Battle of Tannenberg in 1914 and the Battle of Masurian Lakes in 1914. The Brusilov offensive in 1916, a successful Russian offensive, inflicted heavy casualties on the Austro-Hungarian army, but ultimately failed to achieve a decisive breakthrough. The war also expanded beyond Europe. The Ottoman Empire, allied with the Central Powers, fought against the British and French in the Middle East. Battles such as Gallipoli from 1915 to 1916 and Kut in 1916 resulted in significant casualties for both sides. Japan seized German colonies in China and the Pacific, while colonial troops from Africa and Asia were drawn into the conflict, fighting far from their homelands. Section 6. The War at Sea, Blockades and Battleships. The war at sea was characterized by a strategic struggle for control of the seas. Great Britain, with its powerful Royal Navy, imposed a naval blockade on Germany, aiming to strangle its economy by cutting off vital supplies. Germany responded with unrestricted submarine warfare, sinking merchant ships, including those of neutral countries, in an attempt to break the blockade. The Battle of Jutland in 1916, the only major naval engagement between the British and German fleets, resulted in a tactical draw but a strategic victory for the British, who maintained their control of the North Sea. The sinking of the Lusitania in 1915, a British passenger liner carrying American citizens by a German submarine, outraged public opinion in the United States and pushed the country closer to war. Section 7. America enters the fray. The United States, initially neutral, was gradually drawn into the conflict. Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare, which threatened American trade and lives, was a major factor in its decision to enter the war. The Zimmermann telegram in 1917, a secret diplomatic communication intercepted by British intelligence, revealed a German plot to entice Mexico into an alliance against the United States, further fueling American anger. On April 6, 1917, the United States declared war on Germany, citing the need to defend democracy and freedom. The entry of the United States into the war, with its vast industrial resources and manpower, proved to be a turning point in the conflict, tipping the balance of power in favor of the Allies. Section 8. The Collapse and Armistice. By 1918, the Central Powers were nearing collapse. Years of war had exhausted their economies and depleted their manpower reserves. Germany, facing a renewed Allied offensive on the Western Front and unrest at home, sued for peace. Austria-Hungary, riven by internal divisions, disintegrated into separate states. On November 11, 1918, an armistice was signed in a railway carriage in the forest of Compiègne, France, bringing an end to the fighting. The Great War, a conflict that had claimed millions of lives and reshaped the map of Europe, was over. Section 9. A World Transformed. The First World War had a profound impact on the world, leaving an indelible mark on politics, societies, and economies. The war led to the collapse of empires, the redrawing of national boundaries, and the rise of new ideologies. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919, which officially ended the war, imposed harsh penalties on Germany, including territorial losses, disarmament, and crippling reparations payments. The treaty, widely perceived as unjust by Germany, sowed the seeds of resentment that would contribute to the rise of Nazism and the outbreak of World War II. The war also had a profound social impact. The unprecedented loss of life, particularly among young men, created a generation scarred by war. Women who had played a vital role in the workforce during the war gained new rights and opportunities. The war also accelerated social change, challenging traditional hierarchies and leading to calls for greater equality. Economically, the war devastated Europe. Years of fighting had destroyed infrastructure, disrupted trade, and depleted treasuries. The United States emerged from the war as a global power, both economically and militarily. The war also led to the creation of the League of Nations, the first international organization dedicated to preventing future wars. though its effectiveness would be limited in the years to come.